Following last night's Super Tuesday results, former Ambassador Nikki Haley, the last major challenger to former President Trump for the Republican presidential nomination, is suspending her campaign later today. It comes as Donald Trump is projected to win virtually every state in yesterday's contest. And for those of you keeping track of the numbers, here is the delegate count. Trump now has 1,053 delegates. That's just 162 shy of the total he needs for the GOP nomination.
On the Democratic side, President Biden dominated the board. He's projected to win overwhelming majorities almost everywhere. His delegate count is up to 1,548. So he's all but certain to be his party's nominee. Caitlin Huey-Burns is near Mar-a-Lago, where Trump spoke to supporters last night. Caitlin, good morning.
Good morning to you, Nate. Well, this is really big news because this means the general election matchup really begins in earnest. Last night, Donald Trump spoke to a packed room of supporters at his resort that you see here behind me, reveling in his near Super Tuesday sweep.
They call it Super Tuesday for a reason. This is a big one.
Donald Trump is now on the brink of clinching the Republican presidential nomination with decisive wins on Super Tuesday.
November 5th is going to go down as the single most important day in the history of our country.
In a subdued speech at his Mar-a-Lago resort, Trump set his sights on the likely general election rematch with President Biden, who won close to 90% in most Super Tuesday states, excluding Minnesota, where uncommitted came in second, a political protest to Biden's handling of the rising death toll in Gaza.
We did it so we can have a ceasefire.
Last night's contests were not a complete shutout for Nikki Haley. She eked out a win in Vermont, her second primary victory of the cycle, and voter exit polls showed 78% of Haley's supporters in North Carolina said they would not necessarily support Trump if he were the nominee, raising questions about Trump's ability to unify the party.
We have a great Republican Party with tremendous talent, and we want to have unity, and we're going to have unity. And it's going to happen very quickly.
Haley campaign responded, writing, "Unity is not achieved by simply claiming we're united."
Supported the former president in the past, but it's a really hard decision right now because of the way his supporters have treated me and other people supporting Nikki Haley.
And with Haley getting out of the race, that is the major question. Where do her supporters go? Now, we'll hear from Haley herself later this morning as she speaks in Charleston. But notably, she is not expected to endorse Donald Trump in her remarks today. Tony?
That's a big one. Caitlin, thank you very much. So what are the issues driving this election? Let's bring in our CBS News Director of Elections and Surveys, Anthony Salvanto. Anthony, thank you very much for being here. You know, you don't become united by saying, hey, we're united. Nikki Haley said that last night. She's not wrong. Where do her voters go if and when she drops out, it sounds like later today?
So let's look for some clues. And last night, Virginia, for example, right? Her voters have been very often more composed of independents. That's crucial, right? I'll show you right here. She's drawing more independents than Donald Trump was. Well, take a look at this, Tony. Here's a question we asked. Would you support the nominee in November, no matter who it is? And Haley voters said, maybe not, right? Only 25% of them said yes. Now, polling suggests many of them would move back to Donald Trump in a Trump versus Biden matchup, but this leaves some question about them. Maybe the Biden campaign will try to court them.
So the unity issue on the Republican side is a real one?
Oh, absolutely. There's some. And look, in a close race between Trump and Biden, small differences could matter a lot.
One of the many unprecedented things about the 2024 election cycle is the legal challenges Donald Trump faces. If he's convicted in any of these cases that he faces, what are Republicans telling you about their vote?
So let me show you this from North Carolina, but this has happened in state after state. Is Donald Trump fit to be president in your mind if he's convicted of a crime? And 2/3 say yes. And there's a reason behind that for Republicans, and that they think that the charges against him are politically motivated.
Lawfare, they call it.
Yeah, so they discount that, right? And that's part of why they would continue to support him if that's the case. What happens to independent voters? What happens to people on the fence if that happens? That's a big question.
All right, let's talk about the economy. A lot of indicators suggesting it's doing well, but people have to remember, how was it going under Donald Trump as they evaluate whether to put him back into office? What are people remembering about how things were going?
Maybe the most important comparison of this election. Looking back, when people say they recall the Trump economy 2/3 of them say they remember it as being good. Now, compare it to how they're rating the economy now at 38% good. That's a big gap, right? That's a big gap. Now, I will tell you, back in 2018, 2019, they did rate it as good. When the pandemic hit, they did not. So they're remembering that first part of it, maybe more so than the second, but that's a big gap, and that's what Biden is up against. It's that memory.
Yeah, people don't want to remember the pandemic. Anthony Salvanto, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you both. For more on what's next in the presidential race, we're joined by Nancy Cordes. She's here in New York, as you see, and Robert Costa's in Washington. Good morning to you both, guys. But, Bob, we're going to start with you. As Anthony just pointed out, the independents and the moderate Republicans have some concern about Donald Trump at this point. Is his team doing anything? Do they need to do anything to address that?
They might need to, Gayle, in the coming months, but at this point, you didn't hear anything from former President Donald Trump last night about reaching out to Haley. There's a belief inside the Trump campaign that ultimately those traditional Republicans, even if they have some reservations about Trump, will come home because they want to oppose President Biden on issues like border security and the economy. But Haley is not going to issue an endorsement today. She's going to think about her own political capital, and she now sees herself, her allies tell me behind the scenes, as the standard bearer for those traditional GOP values, and she's not going anywhere in terms of trying to have an influence.
It'll be very interesting to see the language she uses today, Bob. But let's talk about you for a second, because we understand you have reporting about Trump's efforts to shore up his campaign finances. What can you tell us about that?
Donald Trump is now the presumptive nominee for Republicans, but he's facing a real cash crunch, both personally and politically. The Democrats are raising so much money. And in fact, Gayle, in recent days on Sunday, former President Trump met with billionaire Elon Musk. He's also meeting with major donors across the country, trying to make sure he has the capital he needs to compete with the Biden campaign. And you also see him scrambling right now to make sure he can put up that bond in the civil fraud case we've been covering in New York. He now has to put up hundreds of millions of dollars in order to move forward in that case.
All right, Nancy, you've been with us the last couple of days. Bob, we'll check in with you in a bit. Nancy, it's clear from the primaries that there are a lot of undecideds when it comes to both parties. How will the Biden administration go after those moderate Republicans and independent voters?
Yeah, I mean, just look at Minnesota last night. 20% of the primary voters there on the Democratic side voted uncommitted. That's bigger than the number that voted uncommitted in Michigan the week before, even though that was much more organized. So, yes, the Biden campaign has some work to do. What they argue is that when it comes to a general election, they are where those independent voters are on big issues like abortion, like taxes, like lowering prescription drug costs. And they argue, as Bob was just pointing out, that they've got the resources, they've got the money, they've got the infrastructure to make that case effectively in a general election campaign. The Trump campaign, they argue, they laid it out in a campaign memo just this morning, is saying the opposite. They're saying if you are not MAGA, we don't want you. And that is not a winning general election message.
Also doesn't sound like a united message. I'm still thinking about Bob saying Donald Trump and Elon Musk meeting. Like to be a fly on the wall for that one. But let's talk about the State of the Union tomorrow. What do you think President Biden needs to do? What does he need to say? How does he need to look?
Well, he has to have a strong performance. He has to give a good speech. He's been spending a lot of time holed up with his advisors working on the speech. He has to lay out what he's accomplished. Poll after poll shows that people still don't realize what he's gotten done. You were just talking to Anthony about the fact that people don't feel like the economy is that great. And so he needs to make the argument that inflation is down, unemployment is down, job growth is up, wages are up. Beyond that, he wants to talk about what he thinks he can accomplish if Republicans work with him. He's going to make the case, hey, I'm trying to move to the middle on border control, which is a big deal for a Democrat, but I'm not getting a hand being held out from the other side.
Yeah.
He's going to argue he's trying to do something about what is one of his weakest issues right now.
The State of the Union is rarely, if ever, this late in the calendar year, right? It's in March. It really ends up being quite a political gift, an opportunity for Joe Biden to get a huge audience and lay out his priorities.
It was initially viewed as kind of a diss by the Republican speaker that he was inviting him this late in the calendar. But it now turns out, as you point out, Tony, to be something of a gift. The general election is now officially underway, and that's how the Biden campaign is viewing it, as the kickoff to the general election.
All right, ready or not, America, here we come.
Yeah, here we come.
Bob and Nancy.
Fasten your seatbelts. It's
Yeah,
gonna be a
fasten your
bumpy
seatbelts,
ride.
right.
Yeah.
Bob and Nancy, thank you. Appreciate
Thanks, guys.
you. All right, we have an update on the controversy over TikTok. The hugely popular social media app is facing scrutiny because a Chinese company owns it. Now Congress is trying one more time to address that concern. As Joe Kent reports, it could lead to TikTok being banned in America.
Popularized by its viral dance videos
I got a big old glass of milk.
and wild storytellers,
It is so many red flags that, I mean, you would have thought I was colorblind.
TikTok might be living on borrowed time. New bipartisan legislation introduced by House committee leaders would force the app to divest from its parent company, Chinese-owned ByteDance, or be banned in the U.S.
There are serious security concerns with TikTok.
Lawmakers have tried and failed to pass similar bills previously. ByteDance has long faced national security concerns that it would share U.S. users' data with the Chinese government. TikTok has denied those claims. In a statement, it said this bill is an outright ban, adding that it will trample First Amendment rights.
Congress is at it again, and TikTok seems to be that bone that they just can't let go of.
This is not a joke. They are going to try to ban TikTok.
The app boasts more than 170 million U.S. users, ranging from local business owners and even political campaigns.
Trump or Biden?
Are you kidding? Biden.
Banning the app could take away their platform and, for some, a source of income.
It's really become central to the social media landscape. And so if you lose TikTok, then, you lose access to a lot of creators.
The bill, which still has several hurdles to surmount before it becomes law, will face its first committee vote on Thursday. For CBS Mornings, I'm Jo Kent.
Netto large storm system that is already causing flooding in Georgia this morning and is now headed north. More than 30 million people under a flood watch as a result. And meteorologist Jim Cantore with our partners at the Weather Channel following all of it for us as he does so well. Jim, good morning to you.
Hey, good morning, Tony. Yeah, we're going to watch this thing move right up the I-95. Rainfall rates maybe an inch an hour. One of those things where you're going from 60 probably down to about 25 miles an hour, given the kind of rain that we're looking at. Here it comes right up the East Coast, and you can see right during the evening rush hour, huge wet commute home for millions of people along the I-95 corridor. The good news is, as quick as this moves in, it moves out by about tomorrow lunchtime. Everybody will be done with it, but not before we couldn't see in some places 2, 3, maybe even 4 inches of rain as a result of this. Is going to fall in a short time. Then our attention start to focus on Texas, where a system that's coming into California today moves out. That is a hail risk tomorrow afternoon west of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. Then the southeast gets into this on Friday with another flood risk as well as it comes at us. So right back over some of these same areas that are getting flooding this morning, get it again on Friday. And more than likely, as these storms develop, they will continue right into Saturday and early Saturday afternoon. Boy, I'll tell you, the drought that we had in the southeast is all but gone, Tony, as a result of these rain events that we've had so far this winter. Back to you.
A little bit of good news. We'll take it. Jim Cantore, thank you very much.
The Biden administration announced a new rule yesterday limiting most credit card late fees to no more than $8 a month. Right now, the average cost for an overdue payment is $32. Banks take in a lot of the money with these late fees, an estimated $14 billion. That's just in 2022. CBS News business analyst Jill Schlesinger is here to tell us how you can save money under this new rule. Good morning. How you doing?
You're doing well.
All right. So they are announcing that there will be a cap of $8 in late fees, but if you read the fine print, there might be some wiggle room with that amount.
Yeah, this is from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and the CFPB did a study, and they looked at large credit card issuers, and that means they had more than 1 million accounts. And they said, okay, what's the average cost to recoup these outstanding debts? And they said it's not $32, it's $8. And that's why they chose $8. However, in the fine print, as you note, if the card issuer can prove it costs more than $8, they got to prove it, they can be more than $8 charges. So that's going to be interesting to see how it's implemented. And this rule goes into effect probably around June 1st. We don't know exactly yet, but it'll be sometime in the late springtime.
So what's one of the direct impacts on consumers?
Absolutely. So let me just be clear about this. We talked about these billion-dollar numbers. I want to break it down a little bit. So CFPB says this will amount to $10 billion after the rule goes into effect annually. And I think that that's important because I want to break it down. There are 45 million people who pay these late charges, so it's about $220 per person. Do you want to get excited? Don't. Why? Because there will be lawsuits challenging this rule. And I want to be clear about that because that is already being spoken about. And also, by the way, the Supreme Court is challenging the CFPB in total as a separate action. So I'm not sure this is going to happen immediately.
Does this rule address credit card interest?
It does not. And by the way, credit card interest rates have almost doubled in the past 10 years. It does allow these high interest rates to persist. This just addresses those late charges that are assessed by the large card issuers.
All right, so the Biden administration also is creating a new task force that will address unfair and illegal pricing on things like groceries and also housing services. Tell us a little bit more about that.
So this is called the Strike Force, which is exciting.
Strike Force.
Yeah, the Strike Force. And it's part of a larger effort by the Biden administration to eliminate junk fees. And we'll see if this comes through with anything meaningful. Department of Justice and FTC are coming together.
Dollar Jill, y'all. Thank you so much.